Okay, so this is the bin where I keep all of the tools and stuff I'll need to work on projects and make repairs to the RV when we're out on the road. And one of the things that I always have to remember not to forget here at home is my heat gun, because I always seem to be finding a use for it regardless of the type of project that I'm working on, whether it's electrical or making some repairs or doing some remodeling work or even some mechanical stuff. I just find I'm always grabbing for my heat gun. It's probably one of the most used little power tools that I have, second to probably my drill driver. I want to show you all the different things that I use a heat gun for, just a number of miscellaneous ways that I've used a heat gun on different projects, including some really easy techniques for removing Eternabond tape. And I'll also throw in a little hack for making some waterproofing repairs to, say, some old hiking shoes with a heat gun and some crayons. Okay, if you've never owned a heat gun before like this, you might be thinking, hey, it's just like a blow dryer, right? Which it sort of is. It looks like one, and it blows heat out of this end. And the main advantages of having a heat gun like this is that it has a lot of variable settings. So on the back, I have 3 different power settings that go from, I don't know what the lowest one is, maybe 500 watts all the way up to 1600 watts. So depending upon how hot you want it to get, you can adjust the overall setting, and then you really can fine-tune the temperature on the back here with this little wheel that goes from like 1, which would be just at a warm level, all the way up to 7, which is the hottest. So at high and 7, it gets pretty darn hot. Now, one of the other advantages of a heat gun like this is that it comes with a number of different attachments that you can stick on the end that are going to suit whatever job you're working on. This one is kind of spreads out the heat or puts it in a more linear way. On the end here, here's one that you can kind of direct it up in a different direction, and this little attachment allows you to kind of really focus that heat to a smaller area. And this really comes in handy, especially if you're working on small wiring jobs where you need to apply some heat shrink tubing. Now, when applying a heat shrink tubing to wiring, you could just use a lighter like this. One issue is that you always have to have the flame below the tubing, and it's not always consistently applied. In some cases, you can't really rotate the wire that well if you're in a confined space to get that heat shrink on. So an advantage of a heat gun in this instance is to be able to come from it from all different sides, and it applies a more consistent heat across that area and gives you a much quicker result. Just like that. And I'm done. Using a heat gun to loosen up and soften the adhesive behind decals and stickers makes them much easier to remove, and you don't have to worry about tearing them or making a big mess of it and just picking at it for a long period of time. Just put it on like a medium heat, warm up the surface a little bit. Don't need to overdo it. Apply some heat to the back and slowly pull it up. If necessary, you can finish up with a little WD-40 or mineral spirits to just wipe off the excess sticky stuff. This is really handy if you need to ship something back using a different carrier, or maybe you just want to package something in a box. It's a gift or a Christmas present. All you've got is these old Amazon boxes laying around that have shipping labels and all this other decal related stuff on it. You can quickly remove all of those with a heat gun. Eternabond tape. I've used a lot of this stuff over the years to do a lot of waterproofing and sealing, as well as mounting some solar panels using this stuff. It's pretty versatile. I've also used the double-sided Eternabond stuff quite often for mounting things. I've used a lot of this stuff over the years, which means I've also had to remove a lot of Eternabond tape as well. And you might think it's really difficult to remove Eternabond, but it's not. If you have a heat gun, you can do this pretty quickly. The first thing you want to do is set the temperature about halfway. I usually put it around the 5 mark, maybe 4 or 5, and then heat the back side of the tape that you want to remove pretty well. And then once it's heated up, you can grab an end and just start pulling on it. And then while you peel it back, you want to heat the back side of that tape in the direction that you're pulling. So slowly heat up the back while you pull it towards the heat gun. And you'll find that it comes up pretty easily. Now once you're just seeing the gray stuff, so the top white layer is gone, then heat that up again with the heat gun, and then you want to soften that up really nicely, and then use a scraper tool at a very sharp angle, and then just slowly scoop up all of that gray, goopy, sticky stuff. You'll be able to just pick it off like a big old sticky blob off of your scraper tool, and that's pretty much it. You can just clean up the rest that's left over with a little bit of mineral spirits, and it'll wipe it right up pretty quickly. So in just those 3 steps, you can remove large sections of Eternabond tape. Now I've found that a heat gun is really effective on removing VHB tape as well. Just use the heat gun to warm it up and just kind of move it across until it's nice and warm, and you'll find that the VHB tape actually peels up pretty easily after you warm it up with a heat gun. I also use a lot of hot glue, using my hot glue gun on a lot of different projects to secure things in place, like this rail inside this electrical box. It is in there really good because I put some hot glue in there, and it works really well. But what if I wanted to remove it? If you get it too hot, then it gets pretty liquidy, so it can get a little messy. But if you just heat it up part way, it's still thick enough and non-viscous, I guess you could say, so you can kind of mold it a little bit better and probably pull it up easier with your fingers. Alright, stop there. It's not too hot. See, now I can just pull that out of there and I'm good to go. If I wanted to remove the rest of this, I can heat it up a little bit more and be able to peel it away with my fingers. Off it comes. If I really heat it up, then it gets nice and soft, and then I can just wipe it off with a towel. Alright, see, it's nice and shiny in there. At this point, I could probably just wipe it right off with this shop towel. There you go. There you go, there's my hot glue. Alright, all gone. So when it comes to working with adhesives and softening up, removing stickers, decals, any kind of thing with an adhesive on it, you can see the heat gun is pretty effective. Another application is if you're working with rubber or vinyl hoses like this. You can see this water hose is just really rigid, and let's say you wanted to connect it to a fitting like this. You can't really get it in too far by hand. Or if it was all the way on, you may not be able to get it off. Now the trick is to actually use a heat gun to heat up the end, and it'll make your job a lot easier. So let's do that. Just gonna warm up the end of this hose. A little bit on the inside. All right. Let's see if that works. Now, yeah, see, look, I can just slide that right in, and then when it cools, it's got a nice solid connection there. Of course, now it's a little difficult to remove, so use the same process. Once you take a clamp off or whatever, just heat it up again, and then making that connection and removing that connection is a lot easier. Now let's say you're working on your vehicle or somewhere underneath your vehicle, and you got a bolt that's pretty stuck. Maybe it's a little rusted. Now the first thing I would do would be to use some penetrating spray like this and spray it on and let that sit and try to loosen the bolt. Now if that's not working, you know, usually the second option would be to apply some heat. You could use a torch, which may work in some instances, but you don't want to necessarily use a torch if, say, you have some rubber fittings nearby and you would melt them, or you know, maybe you're near the fuel tank or the engine and you really don't want that to be near an open flame. So the next option is to use a heat gun, and you can typically heat it up and get the same effect as a torch, and just put it on high and just really focus it on that whole area around the bolt. And that heat may help loosen the bolt and allow you to get it off without having to use a torch. There we go. Oh, ouch. So this one is not only funny, but it's quite effective. In fact, it's lasted me for many years in the past. And let's just say that somebody invites you to go out hiking and you're like, yeah, that sounds great, let's go hiking. And then they say, oh, but it's probably gonna rain pretty hard and we might be in snow for part of the hike. Oh, I've got some hiking shoes, but they're not really waterproof. Here's a quick fix, but you may need to steal your kids' crayons. You don't want the machine washable kind, you want the old waxy kind. Find a color that matches that area that you want to treat. When it heats up, then that waxy crayon just kind of soaks into the fabric and becomes pretty waterproof. I've gone hiking in some shoes that I've totally covered in crayon before, and they've lasted me years and years, and my feet have stayed dry. Well, I bet you never thought that that you'd have a need for a 50-cent box of crayons anymore. You might want to pick up a couple coloring books just in case you never use them on your shoes. But I hope you found something interesting in these heat gun tips. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this, more like tool tip kind of videos. And if you have any additional recommendations for how to use a heat gun or what you've used a heat gun for, you know, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And until next time, take it easy and I'll see you later.